Good morning, everybody. I want to thank you all for coming on short notice. And we are introducing a bill today with 26 co-sponsors. And it has to do with the stock and with this particular bump stock device that's easy to put on these weapons. We have now witnessed the deadliest mass shooting in United States history. Nearly 60 killed and more than 500 injured. Those numbers are simply stunning. In just 9 minutes, an individual was able to turn a concert venue into a battlefield. One person, 9 minutes, utter devastation. We now know the shooter had at least 23 weapons. We all know that a dozen of those semi-automatic rifles were outfitted with what are called bump stock devices. Bump stocks, which cost less than $200, increase a semi-automatic rifle's rate of fire from between 45 and 60 rounds per minute to between 400 and 800 rounds per minute. That's the same rate of fire as automatic weapons. And the only reason to modify a gun is to kill as many people as possible in as short a time as possible. There's a long history of laws to ensure civilians don't have automatic weapons. Strict laws were put in place after the St. Valentine's Day massacre in 1929, when Thompson submachine guns were used to kill 7 gangsters in Chicago. And in 1986, a law was signed that banned all new machine guns for civilians and put in place extremely strict regulations on existing automatic weapons. However, there was a loophole. These bump stock devices, which were likely used in Las Vegas, show anyone how to modify a legal semi-automatic weapon so it can function much like a fully automatic weapon. It would ban the sale, transfer, importation. Our bill is simple and straightforward. Ban manufacturing or possession of accessories that accelerate a semi-automatic rifle's rate of fire to that of an automatic weapon. And it was part of the last assault weapons bill we did. Senator Murphy and I co-sponsored that. And I should say, I was hoping that more of our members would be here. We have 26 Democrats in less than an hour, but I'm delighted Senator Blumenthal and Senator Sanders are here. So those who violate the ban would be subject to the same penalties as those who illegally possess machine guns. Closing this loophole actually should not be a partisan or political issue. There's been broad agreement for decades that automatic weapons should not be legal. And what we saw was an automatic weapon being used. And my understanding is that he had 12 of these devices or similar devices in that hotel room. Some have said we shouldn't do this now. We should wait. Now is not the time. Ladies and gentlemen, when is the time going to be there? There is no better way to honor the 59 people who were slaughtered than to take action to prevent this from happening yet again. If not, when will we ever do it? After Columbine, I thought we would act. After Virginia Tech, I thought we would act. After Tucson, when one of our colleagues was shot in the head and nearly killed, I thought we would act. After Aurora, that horrible thing in the movie theater, I thought we would act. And particularly after Sandy Hook, when 20 first graders were slaughtered, I thought for sure we would act. After Orlando, I thought we would act. And now, after Las Vegas, I hope senators will finally summon the political courage to stand up and say, enough is enough. We can't sit by this deadliest mass shooting it is really time for action. We cannot do nothing. And now I'm delighted to be joined, and this is very quick, Senator Blumenthal and Senator Sanders. Senator Blumenthal, you were here first, so you go first. And then
Thank
Bernie.
you. It is the time for action, Senator Feinstein. And first, I really want to thank you for your sustained and steadfast fight for gun violence prevention over many, many years. You really provided a model for all of us long before I arrived here. It is a time for thoughts and prayers. There are never enough thoughts and prayers. They help. I know from my state's experience after the tragedy we endured, the outpouring of emotion was important, and those condolences and thoughts were very meaningful. But thoughts and prayers are not enough. Mr. President, in visiting Las Vegas today, I hope you will provide leadership and, at the very least, back a bill that stops the killer accelerators like these bump stocks. This device has no purpose but to convert an already deadly weapon into a completely lethal carnage force multiplier. It should be banned. There is no legitimate reason or excuse in recreation or hunting for a bump stock device. This sliding fire mechanism essentially harnesses the recoil energy to enable quicker firing. The searing noise of that staccato firing in Las Vegas that everybody has now heard countless times should be a wake-up call to this Congress. That firing ought to be echoing in our minds as we consider whether a bump stock device should be permitted to be sold lawfully, in fact, online. So my hope is that we can come together and at the very least, stop the sale of a device that is patently designed just to kill people. Fully automatic weapons, machine guns, are banned. Essentially banned unless they were sold before May 1986 or are registered with the federal government. What the bump stock device does is, in essence, circumvent the law, which everybody accepts, and enable law breaking. What excuse can there be for continued sale of bump stocks? None. So let me say finally, my hope is that the president will in fact lead, that he will back this measure. It's the least we can do. It's not the most that we should do. We have a full agenda, which we will be introducing over the next days and weeks. Background checks, a ban on semi-automatic assault weapons, high-capacity magazines. They were integral. They were essential to the tragedy that happened in Las Vegas. We ought to be angry. We ought to be furious that bump stocks are still sold in the United States of America. And I hope that we can harness the fury of America and that the president will lead. Thanks to Senator Sanders for being here.
Bernie, thank you for coming.
Let me thank Senator Feinstein for her years and years of leadership effort on gun safety legislation, and thank Senator Blumenthal, who learned a very, very painful lesson at Sandy Hook about the need for gun safety. What happened in Las Vegas is a national tragedy, but it is one that we continue to repeat, as Senator Feinstein listed off. In fact, there are more mass shootings in this country than there are days in the year, events that become so frequent that we become numb to them. But here is the point about Las Vegas. In a 9-minute period, 9 minutes, a very sick individual was able to wound and kill well over 500 people in 9 minutes. And if it weren't for the bravery of individuals at that concert who risked their own lives saving others and excellent police work, that number could have been much, much higher. And the reason he was able to accomplish so much destruction, so much killing and wounding in such a short period of time was because he used a simple device to convert his semi-automatic rifles into fully automatic rifles. In 1986, Congress, for very obvious reasons, banned the sale of automatic weapons, weapons which are designed to kill large numbers of people in a very short period of time. That's what those weapons are designed to do. We agreed as a nation many decades ago to ban fully automatic weapons. Unfortunately, these so-called bump stocks provide an effective workaround to convert a legal weapon into an illegal weapon. In other words, if we want to enforce and honor the law passed in 1986, it is imperative that we pass Senator Feinstein's legislation. Common sense suggests that we have got to do everything possible to prevent the conversion of semi-automatic rifles into automatic rifles. If not, the 1986 law means nothing. While it is too late for the victims in Las Vegas and the victims in Newtown and the victims in Charleston and the other terrible shootings that we have seen, it is not too late to prevent the next set of innocent Americans from becoming victims. Now is the time to save lives in this country. Now is the time to pass this legislation.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. Ladies and gentlemen.
When the president said, we'll talk about gun laws down the road, what did you think he meant by that, and have you reached out to him on this issue?
Well, I think what he meant is he didn't want to talk about it at the time. I am going to reach out, and I'm going to take my own particular way to do it, but I am going to reach out. And I think I never thought in this country we'd see something like this. I mean, I have found, as you all know, somebody shot to death who was a colleague of mine, and the mayor shot to death. I know what guns can do. This is taking it into war. This is taking it into the subterfuge that was so successfully used here. The camera to watch who came down the hallway, the way the room was placed, where the windows were broken out, how the weapons were set up, the 12 bump stops. And everybody heard those blasts of ammunition. I don't think there's anybody in America that hasn't heard what that is. Is this the model that we want to put forward for the future? Are these things that we want sold over the internet? So no matter who could easily change a weapon bought legally into a weapon that would be totally illegal and with good reason, and go out and use these in businesses. This is what's happening in schools, just to kill large numbers of people. And, you know, I'm glad that Senator Blumenthal mentioned the families. I've been glued to television watching people who have helped people dying on this battlefield, looking at men over their wives who are dead on the battlefield. Ladies and gentlemen, this can't go on in this country. We have to step up.
Has there been dialogue with
I'm sorry, I don't know who you...
I'm Ed.
Ed,
Hi.
Keith.
My deficit.
Two quick things. You suggested here at the start that this came together very quickly. Can you give us a sense of when you decided to focus in on this and how quickly you were able to get your Democratic colleagues on board? And have you spoken with any of your Republican colleagues about potentially supporting this very specific ban
Well,
do you have any sense
yeah,
that there
I'll
will
tell
be-
you. Actually, Senator Schumer called me, said he knew this was part of the assault weapons bill that we introduced after Sandy Hook, and that the thing is really well worded because it's short and it's plain spoken language. So everybody will know exactly what's banned, no matter how fancy or how simple the device is. And it unfortunately got out. My plan was to talk to some Republicans, and I haven't had a chance to do that. And it was obviously out, so we decided we would introduce it today. And our staff has been calling, and so far we have 26 senators aboard. I'm delighted these two, they each have their own constituency. Bernie probably the biggest. Would you say that?
I would.
And so I don't know what to do except to continue to fight, because reason doesn't control this situation. And when you see a country music festival, when you see 18-year-olds in boots and hats, my own daughter was going to go. I have an email from her. She was going to go with neighbors. And they, for one reason or another, both families decided they wouldn't. They were going to stay at that hotel. That's how close it came to me. And I just thank God. It's one of those misses in life. It could happen to any one of us.
She was going to go to that.
Yes,
concert.
Route 91 it's called. I didn't know that, but now I do.
I've talked to a few of our Republican colleagues. Senator Feinstein is the leader, but there's been a lot of talk about what we can do, where we can come together, and I think this issue represents a very likely common ground if there is one.
Senator, you mentioned all these other terrible shootings, Newtown and Sandy Hook and Aurora. People are, I think, what do you say to people who are cynical now that Congress will ever address this issue, even in this narrow way, after failing to do so after all those other terrible incidents?
Mr. and Mrs. America, you have to stand up. You have to say enough is enough. You have to say that there is no reason to make a semi-automatic assault weapon into a fully automatic battlefield weapon. No target practice justifies what happened yesterday. And we know that these suggestions take root. We know that we haven't been able to stop this. I'm old enough to have watched on television the Texas bell tower in 1966. And I thought, this has never happened before in America. Thank God I live here. It's never going to happen again. And then it began. And it's gone on decade after decade. And I have watched it. And I have to stand up. I have to fight. And please, Mr. and Mrs. America, help us. We know the power that's on the other side. You have to stand up and help us.
Senator Feinstein?
Yes.
I remember that after Sandy Hook, you commented then that if the sight of all those slaughtered children wouldn't make the difference as you reintroduced your assault weapons ban, that nothing would. So in your heart of hearts at this moment, do you really have any hope that you can pass this legislation?
I do. I do. Sandy Hook, I keep alive, and Senator Blumenthal faces it more than I do, with the, I think it's the New York Post cover, with the 20 children on the cover, and slashed across it is for shame. And that's what I feel about this country, for shame. Why can't we stop this? Why can't we see that gun use is sane, that bad people don't get guns, that mental defectives don't get guns, that juveniles and gangs don't get guns? And why can't we keep a weapon from becoming a military battlefield weapon? And this is just a simple device. I'm told it's available over the internet. I've seen pictures of young women installing them, and why don't we just stop it? Why don't we just say it's illegal? That's why I think that our Republican colleagues may have said, you know, maybe enough is enough. Maybe this is a step that we can take, because the message is out there to others. And that's the message that I worry about the most.
You know, Senator Reagan was, President Reagan was almost assassinated.
Thanks, Bernie.
And the Brady bill eventually was passed, but it took 10 years. America reached a tipping point. I think we've reached a tipping point in this country, and we really have to summon the outrage of America and make sure that it's translated into action. At some point, after all of the sadness of Sandy Hook and these other unspeakable tragedies, there has to be action. I was with a couple of the parents, Sandy Hook parents, last night, and we were recalling the days and nights and weeks and months afterward when they came here, and they were the faces and voices, and they moved people. That can happen again. And remember, last time around, I repeat this ad nauseum, but the Manchin-Toomey bill got a majority, 54 votes. We needed 60. A vast majority of Americans support background check. My guess is if you ask people whether they favor sale on the internet of these kinds of devices, you will be hard put to find anyone who favors it. We need to make it an issue, and Senator Feinstein has led and is leading so well on this issue, and her appeal to Mr. and Mrs. America is exactly what we need to be saying.
Senator Blumenthal, this is something.
You've said that you haven't yet had conversations with many Republicans, and Senator Blumenthal has. But Republican leaders here have been very clear that this is not a legislative priority for them. So what's different now? What is your plan to appeal to many Republicans that potentially gives you hope and a better outcome, in your opinion, especially as we've heard from some
The deaths and wounding of over 500 people. That's what's different about this.
And what's your plan?
There's never been an event like this in modern American history. That's been said before. And we got to stem it. We got to stop it. And you're not going to stop it if we keep advertising these things for sale.
And so what's your plan for pulling in Republicans?
I'm going to begin to talk to people. I had much more time when I first came here and did the first assault weapons bill. Of course, the Senate was so different then, and there wasn't cloture. And we had Bob Dole, who stood up there and said, this is a bill we should argue on the floor, and we did. And it was a motion to table, and we won it by one vote. So it's always been a fight. And the nation probably is more polarized now than ever before. But when you see the numbers of young people at a country music event in a theoretically safe venue, who would ever think that someone from a 32nd floor would knock out windows, get 12 of these, line up their weapons, and go from weapon to weapon shooting people? So we've got to say it's not going to happen again. Anyway.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
very
you.
much,
Great show.
Richard. Thank you.